should be live. How's everyone doing today? I think so far it's just me and Steve, and you know what? That's okay. I was mentioning this in chat. Even if no one shows up, I'm still gonna do these because part of the reason why I'm doing these is for myself. And in time, it'll grow, and I know that the audience is out there. I know there are a lot of people playing Genesis. I'm really great. Thank you, Steve, for letting me know that the sound's good, video's good. Yep. Um, I'm I'm always trying to push myself and become better at everything I do, and the only way to become better at it is through practice. So I appreciate everyone who comes and watches and joins us every week. But part of this is it's a growing experience for me. All right, so let's jump into this. As always, I start with why I do this. I already talked a little bit about this, but there's three big reasons. One is practicing presenting. I actually had the opportunity to be in front of a group of U of T alum, and I was talking about the company, and I mentioned to them that I am not always used to being in front of a camera, and I hope that these Friday live streams have gotten me better at doing this. And at the end, they were saying, you were great. You were able to do this, and I really appreciated that feedback because it gives me that confirmation that I'm doing this and I am developing these skills. So hopefully this becomes a lesson learned for you is that if you want to practice on particular skills, the best way of getting better at them is just by doing them. Even if you feel like you're at the bottom, you will get it there. And the only way of doing that is by actually doing it. The second reason I do these is to commit to give a commitment of connection to the community that we work with. So if you have topics you want me to talk about and want to be part of these conversations, then let me know. Last week we had John Miller actually part of the talk, and he came, asked questions. This is for me to connect with you, the community. So let me know if there's anything I can do to make this entire process, everything about this better, and I will work on that. And then the last is to put out content that is specifically focused on TCGs and CCGs. There's a lot of great content out there, and I will give a shout out to Board Game Design Lab for all the great content that they create every single week. And then one thing I don't mention every week, and I should be mentioning this, is why did I put this book cover here? I have a background in software testing. This is a book that taught me a lot, and it was through the lessons learned of very experienced people that I became better myself. I become more confident in my area of expertise. And if these videos can be cataloged at some point as, lessons learned, as things that people can do to become better in their own space, then I'll feel like I'm paying it forward. All right. Before we jump into the topic, let's give a shout out to all our Patreon supporters. Special shout out to Andrew, Gunther, Jacob, and Steven, and to Pack Puller, Steve-O, Will, and Good Time Games. These are all our top tier supporters. Thank you for all your support. Pack Pullers actually did a really cool video where they had just seen the game randomly. They bought a booster box and they started opening up packs. And it was a really fun experience for me to see that video. I've been in contact with them since, so hopefully we'll see more Genesis related videos come from them in the future. Next month's promo is going to be that promo backflip. I'm doing something a bit different with all of the Patreon promos, Fusion League promos. You'll see this changes coming up. We're always constantly trying to find ways to improve them. This is our new outline for promos. Let me know in the comments what you think about it. How instead of dropping the text box to the bottom, just made it more transparent so you can still see all the arts, and then putting this white border around all the text. It gives you an opportunity to read the cards still, but you get to see the full art. I want to know about that. And then also everyone who should be getting their Patreon packages, I actually have a huge pile of them right beside me. They are going to be delivered soon, and you should be getting them. And for everyone who is part of Patreon, you'll be getting this promo con, which looks absolutely amazing. So you'll know all about it once you get your letter. Yeah, there's just a huge pile of packages that I gotta ship out over the next few days. All right, and then one last thing. Thank you to all our future leaguers. I know that tonight will be a little bit of a weird night for it, but there is still Future League happening after this live stream. So if you're part of that Discord community, come and do all the testing. And I'll be talking about Future League in today's chat. So I'm really excited about talking about that. The next promo for Future Leaguers, everyone who supported us last month, for May, you'll be getting this light list. And I'll tell you more information about what promos are going to be happening in the future as we get them. But still, it's a reverse art, which would be really, really cool to have. All right, without further ado, let's get into this topic about testing a TCG. It's a lot of work. We'll say that to begin with. All right, just a little bit of an outline. I'm going to be talking about UATs, user acceptance testing, sanity testing, smoke testing, exploratory testing, and play testing. What is the difference between all of these? Why are they valuable? How to define them? What is your outcome with all of them? These are really, really great things to have, not just if you're making a collectible card game, but if you're making anything and you're looking at the testing process, what are your tools and how can you organize yourself and how can you talk to other testers about the work that you do? So let's start by talking about UAT, user acceptance testing. This was the gold standard of testing for a very, very long time. For people who are not part of the software industry or not part of the big production space, you'll still see this type of testing done quite a bit in something that we call the Waterfall Methodology, where products are designed in one phase, then developed in another, then tested in another phase, and it goes down a waterfall from person to person, from department to department. Things aren't done concurrently. Everything is done in sequence, and testing is usually the very last thing. And then, hey, John Miller, thank you for joining us. That's a very, very intense day. Come and unwind as we talk about testing. I'm going to get very passionate during this talk because testing was my passion for over 10 years. And even now, I still think about it quite a bit. It's a really, really cool field to be in. So UATs, user acceptance testing, the way it used to go was, just say you're making a brand new product. You're making a cell phone. I'm going to talk about this because I first encountered UATs while working for BlackBerry. So a new cell phone's coming out. You got the specs all created. So first thing that happens is you get the project description, the project plan made, and you start planning it, like when all the phases are going to go. Then from there, they start the development. They start creating the hardware. They start creating the software and all that development's happening. Then the development ends, and then they send it off to do the testing. The problem with this process is, as you can imagine, when you're going down a waterfall, it's really hard to go back up a step, right? Everything is just trickling downward. But what happens when you get to the very bottom and you realize that you missed a feature or one of your features isn't working? Well, you have to push that back up. But by the time you push that back up, all the people who were developing that feature, it's been months now, and they will forget everything that they did way back when. So their mind isn't at the right space. I always looked at UATs as this is the ultimate checklist. These are all the things you could potentially do with the software. And the reason why it's the user acceptance testing is this is the checklist that if all this is good, then the user will accept this product. It's a bit of a nightmare to work with. I'll talk about my experience working at BlackBerry. We would get the UATs. You would have 6 days to complete it, 6 working days. So that's usually Monday through Friday and then the following Monday. And at the end of the day, a lot of the results were useless because you were testing something that's been tested to death over and over and over again. But you still had to do it every single time there was a new software release. So you could find yourself being assigned a UAT, have a week off, and then assigned another UAT. And it just felt like your talents weren't being valued. And at the end of the day, it was just a checklist. The problem with checklists, and I'm going to be mentioning this in other places, but testing is not using a checklist. That's not what testing is. A checklist is to check things, but that's not testing. Testing is about having an assumption, coming in and proving that, and then figuring out the deviations from there, right? So the UATs, these fell out of favor for a very, very long time. Any company that is working at a faster pace doesn't use these anymore, and I would recommend you don't use these anymore. It may feel like when we design a game, we follow that waterfall methodology. So to say I'm making a new set, I plan it all out, I start creating the cards, then I test all the cards, then I create all the artwork, then I create all the packaging, then I ship it out. But if you follow that methodology, you're going to find yourself having a really, really hard time releasing your products on a regular schedule. And another thing that's very important for testing as a whole is this concept of pass criteria. So I was writing the UAT and I realized one thing that the UAT did excel at, one of the big wins we got out of that, was an understanding of what the pass criteria is. What does it mean for your product to be passing, be okay to release? What does it mean for your product to fail and should not be released? So there are key things I look at when to have a good organizational structure of testing and quality. And one thing I think about is the person who defines the project owner, the product owner, shouldn't be the one who actually creates the product. The person who creates the product, so the developer, shouldn't be the one who tests it. And the reason for these different sectors is because the project owner, when they go to actually start creating the thing, they're going to start adding something called scope creep. They have a particular thing they're trying to build, and they just keep on shoving more and more things into it. And eventually it gets to a point where what the end product is so much more or not even close to what the original intention was, because they have this a feeling that they know the product better than everyone else. Not every product owner does this, but I've seen product owners do this. And I've seen developers who test the product and they get tunnel vision. They assume that, oh, I wrote this piece of code so well. I made this card so perfect that it doesn't need to be tested. There's no reason to testing it. There's no way it could break things. And then it inevitably breaks something. So the three scopes of having a product owner, a developer, and a tester is very, very important. Now, if you're doing this project on your own, there's nothing you can do. If you're developing your own project and you're a one-person show, then you work with what you got, right? But ideally, you want to start separating these. So if I were to talk about how we do it on our end, I set the pass criteria. I am working more as a product owner. I know end to end what we're doing for printing, how much everything's going to cost, what the aim of the set is. I create all these criterias and then I hand it off to different departments. So when it comes to designing the set, I hand it off to Alex. Alex starts designing the cards. He starts putting it into the flavor of the lore, making sure all the pieces are fitting. But he's not the one who tests it. The testers are the future leaguers. Steven, I know you do a great job with all the testing. Shahan, Will, a lot of these people put in a lot of time to make sure that the cards are thoroughly tested and are comparable to each other in a lot of great ways. So the feature leagues start testing it. Then we have another layer of testing. I put this under testing, but we have an editor layer who would come in and make sure that the way the abilities are written are appropriate. This used to be me, but now I'm very grateful we have a new person who's doing a lot of this editing. So having the separation means that someone could do the work without the preconceived biases of the person before them. Now, where it does fall apart is that as a team, you need to start appreciating and understanding each other and work collaboratively with each other. And what might happen, and I've been accused of doing this quite a few times, is that I will see a chunk of code or I'll see a new feature being developed and I'll say, oh, I know the person who's working on this. That wasn't their intention, and give them the benefit of the doubt. That can be definitely in your favor in a lot of ways. It can make the bad news a lot easier to deal with, but it's also can lead you into bad situations where you forgive a pretty major mistake. And I will own up to another one of these in Genesis, where I think a lot of people gave me the benefit of doubt, and we pushed forward with Epiphany. That's one of my cards. You'll see my name as a creator. Now, I fought tooth and nail to keep that card in the set, and we have this back and forth. We talk about it all the time. What is Epiphany? Is it good for the game? Is it healthy for what's happening? But at the end of the day, I think part of the reason why the future leaguers didn't fight me on it as much was because they gave me the benefit of the doubt. So that's why I try to remove myself from that process, right? John, I need an editor. It's horribly time consuming. You know what? If you're looking for an editor, I know some good people, and I can definitely get you in contact. Just if you're looking for quality, look at budget, because budget is it's an interesting topic in and itself. Maybe I'll do a talk on that one day. All right. Another thing that this comes up over and over again. So we're going to switch away from the UAT and start talking about smoke testing and sanity testing. These are two of my favorite things when it comes to what we used to do and what we can currently do. Um, these two things are not the same. You're going to see this all over the place. You're going to see people write blogs saying smoke testing, sanity testing, the names are interchangeable. If they are, then why did we create two different names for them? There is different functions, and we need to be on the same page of what we're talking about. So let me define these and talk about them and the value that they add along the way. So let's talk about sanity testing. Sanity testing is you want to maintain the sanity of your program, of your game, of your product, right? This was the tool that was used to replace the UI. Yes, it's still a checklist, but this isn't a checklist of everything that ever needs to be done, right? If we're talking about a cell phone, it doesn't break down, oh, I need to be able to make calls for 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It's just, can I make calls, right? It's the high level idea of all the core functions. And I'm happy you picked up on that, Stephen. So yeah, it picks all the high level functions, and it starts adding to it a product after product, release after release, the list of I've made this mistake before and I won't make it again. It's okay to make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes, and every product is gonna have bugs or update problems or whatever. The key and the way to build trust between you and your customers and your clients is how do we prove to them that we won't make the same mistake again? Now, I know I've made the same mistakes multiple times. I just don't make the major mistakes multiple times. That's stuff that I take some pride on. Will I make them multiple times? It's possible. It's always possible, right? And I hope when that moment does come and I make a major mistake, the community will forgive me for it, because they'll understand that as a company, yes, we're a company and we're this organization that's supposed to be perfect, but we're not. A company is just made of a bunch of people, and everyone has their own flaws. So this list, ideally, you would automate it as it grows, and it should grow organically. With each release, you're adding new items of mistakes that you made that you don't want to have in the next list. And you shouldn't put your pressure on to predict all of them. This was the big issue with UATs. UATs try to predict every single thing that should go in the test, but that's impossible. You can't predict everything. And once you do start adding everything, the test suite becomes massively long. Our smoke test, our sanity test, is pretty compact. It's maybe about 15 or 20 items that we check for every single card when we go to print. And this is stuff like we double check the speed of abilities because we've made that mistake with Thunderstruck. We double check the artist name because we made that mistake on the Agile playmats. You won't see them on the released Agile playmats, but as you know, you will. If you look at the Agile playmats, the artist name on there is wrong. The cost of cards, and this is where VQ Rabbit comes in. It's the most iconic, like, what do you call it, errata card, because it was just it's just one of those things, and we've made that mistake, so it's part of our sanity test to try our best not to make that mistake again. Card numbers, if you look at the tip cards in Raise, you'll notice that the numbers are off. We've made that mistake, so it's part of our sanity test to make sure we don't make those mistakes again, to make sure we maintain our sanity. And I have on here, like, how would we automate this in the future? Honestly, I don't know. But that's one of the goals, is that we'll find a way to automate this because it's a checklist. It's still not truly testing. We call them sanity testing, but it's the sanity checklist. It's a smoke checklist. We'll get into true testing in a little bit. So that's sanity tests. Those are things that you've made the mistake before. Don't make it again. Smoke test is the goal is to find the fires. Your software, your product, your release, there are fires. You don't know there are fires, but there are fires. And if you're really good, you can find the smoke off in the distance and you can go hunt down those fires and fix them. Oh wait, missed some things. Yeah, Stephen, fitting image. John, Force of Will is having a major issue with this at the moment. So it's a great point. Yeah, I think testing as a whole is a wonderful topic. I love it. I mean, there's no way I could have been obsessed with it for 10 years without loving it. I did a lot of talks around it, and I will continue to do these talks. So, even for everyone that's joining me now, thank you so much. If you don't catch it this time around, you'll probably hear me do the same talk in another year or 2 years because this isn't the first time I've done this talk, and I enjoy talking about it so much. And one of the reasons why I'm doing it now is we just finished. Actually, we're going through the testing for Origins, and we finished the testing for second edition not too long ago. So all this is still fresh in my mind. So the point of the smoke test is where you really, really want to focus down on is what's unique about this round of testing. If you're going to be doing another round of testing, you're going to be doing some sort of update, there has to be something that you want to highlight and really focus on the testing there. If you're not having anything new, then why are you spending time testing? This is one thing that I really disliked about some companies where they would put out a software update and just say it's like 13.0.0.1. Like it's such a minor change. And usually it's just like a typo fix. But yet we would have to retest the entire software. And if you're doing manual testing, that's a pain. I told you, it could take 6 days just to put out that small software change. There's this wonderful graph. I'll mention it briefly here, but it's this idea of how late down the process does it cost you to find a bug, and like finding it in the very early phases, like where it's just a typo, it costs you nothing. But once it's on production, it can cost you like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars just to fix something small like a typo. And when we get to a point that the cards are already templated, and my editor comes and is like, "Oh, this sentence should actually have a comma here," I'm like, seriously, I'm not going to spend the 45 minutes it's going to take to fix this one comma. It's not the end of the world. So there's a good relationship between how late you find the issue and how much it's going to cost you to fix it. Okay, so you have something unique that you're testing in this release. Your smoke test should be focusing on that one particular thing very, very heavily and trying to figure out what are all the pass criteria for it and what are all the exemptions that you could do to make sure that that one thing's tested as well as you can. Because your sanity testing is carried over from release to release. So that list hasn't changed, but now your smoke list, this should be a completely different thing. So I'm going to tell a little bit of story about how we had when I was working on a QA team. And one of the best things we ever implemented was when our developers were planning out their next features and they were writing what all the pass criteria were. We would spend that time going over their pass criteria and adding to them things that we knew from our experience of things that could go wrong. We would review them as a team. The three of us would sit together, look at all the pass criteria, be like, "Oh, I've seen something like this before, and it's failed in the past because of this." And we would add our experiences onto those tickets. Then we get that new list of pass criteria, and when we would go to do the smoke test, we have so much more to look at than just what was there initially. And because we're talking about it as a team, we have a lot of different voices coming into it. So that was really cool. This actually came into effect when we were doing second edition because there's a few changes in second edition. We'll talk about it more on Tuesday with the rulebook changes, but like things like no attack ability are going to have the reminder text. So we had to actually have that as a smoke test because that's something that's dramatically different going from raise to second edition. Another thing is that stun, the wording for stun is changing a little bit, and paralyzed too because of it. So those had to get very thorough smoke tests around them. And I think we did a pretty good job. I'm very confident with the team that we had testing everything. So smoke tests, they're very, very focused. But again, there's primarily just checklists. There is some testing in it where sometimes in the middle of doing your checklist, You realize, oh, there's an issue somewhere. How do I dig into this? How do I explore this a little bit more? And then we get into exploratory testing. This is agile testing. This is really, really cool stuff because a lot of it is based off of questions. It's a question-driven approach. So exploratory testing, you had UAT. UAT's got replaced by smoke and sanity testing. Smoke and sanity testing haven't gone away, but they're starting to get automated. And then testing is now being looked at as exploratory testing, and we call this ET for short. So exploratory testing, very, very powerful tool. It's question driven. So some of the reasons why it's so powerful is because you use a heuristic approach towards your testing. You start laying out all the things that are very, very important about your software as a whole or about your product as a whole. And then you start digging into each one, asking yourself questions. How does this adhere to this? How does this play into that? What are the edge cases to this? And then once you start asking some questions, maybe it'll lead you down a different approach that you never thought of. And your key here, this is the best part about it, is you start following your gut to that. You start saying to yourself, all right, well, if this leads this way, then we can go down this way and then keep on exploring it. And you start getting all these branches of different ways to explore it. This is very, very useful. So one way to make the most of your exploratory testing is having a driver and a passenger. And what I mean by this is you have one person who's actually doing the testing, they're asking the questions, they're playing around with the software or the game or the product, whatever you're doing, and another person who's just watching and trying to understand more and maybe questions the questions. So it's like, I think it should be good to do this. Why do you think it's good to do that, right? And then it allows to create a bridge of shared experiences that you can use for sanity testing or smoke testing in the future. But exploratory testing is different than play testing. When a lot of people talk about testing a game, they only talk about play testing. If you're only doing play testing, you are going to miss so many issues that are going to come up in the future. When I talk about exploratory testing with the team, it's a lot more about thought experiments, hypotheticals. It's a lot less to do with actually playing the cards. So I talked about heuristics in the past, just earlier. We follow our heuristics to start asking the questions. So we ask questions like, why are we making this card? Does this card fit the pillars that we've designed? Does this card adhere to our veto list? Is this card broken? And then we have other questions to ask about brokenness, right? Is this card fun to play? Is this card fun to play against, right? There are other things that we look at. And then does this card serve a purpose? We want to start with those questions and dig into them. And if we can get through a card and all these questions are very simple, then we pass it through. There's not a lot more we can do with it. But if this card starts leading into some deeper wells of other issues, then we want to put that card off on hold and then think about it some more before trying to rush it in any situation. This actually comes into play with what was happening with the pitch contest in Axon, where it was tied between Proteus, Conjecture of Proteus, and Sapper. The reason why we went with Sapper is because heuristically it was a lot easier to answer these questions. But when it comes to Conjecture, it was a lot harder to figure out, does this adhere to our pillars? Does this actually work with start strong, struggle later? Always have options. Does this actually work with our veto list? Because one of the items on our veto list is net draw. So is this actually net draw? Can we consider this net draw, or is this something else? So exploratory testing is a lot more of a thought experiment. There are times where you actually need to get your hands on the card, but sometimes you don't actually need to play the card in a game. You just need to play the card out in a particular situation. So let's take something like Lightless. Lightless, we're like, okay, that's a really, really great card. What does it do? And then we say, all right, how does this play against the Angel? Well, we don't need to play an entire game and wait for that moment when the Angel and the Lightless are both on the board. We can just put the Lightless and the Angel on the board, and then we'll walk through different scenarios. What if the Angel does this? What if Lightless does that? Does this card function the way it does? That's exploratory testing. Let's talk about play testing, though. Play testing, your goal here is trying to discover something you couldn't from exploratory testing or going back sanity testing or smoke testing, right? You want to try to find something different. And a lot of this is going to feel weird because it might seem like it's an emotional drive. It feels different playing the card than it does in testing, but that's not true. It's just your perspective on it changes when all of a sudden you go from hypothetical situations in your head where there is no risk situation going on to actually playing the game where you want to win. And when you want to win, you start making decisions you wouldn't normally. Let's take Core, for example. Mechanically, it's a great card. If we go through smoke tests, sanity tests, it's fine. You go through exploratory testing, you're like, oh, this is really cool. It'll work well with Call to the Bones. It works well with if you're playing a lot of 1/1s. Even some summons have a high attack, low defense, like Grey Wolf. There's a lot of synergy with this, and then you get to draw cards while you can set yourself up and thing your deck. That's really, really cool. Mobius is a great ability. No need to do any playtesting. But once you actually go to play and you're in a situation where you're trying to fight for your to win, all of a sudden you realize maybe you don't play Mobius as often as you'd rather. You'd actually like to use your Exert token for something else. This is where that playtesting is actually valuable because it can create those environments that are different than what you're looking at normally. So you have some other examples that I had when we created Odar originally, the spur mechanic. Everyone thought that that was going to be broken. Then people started playing with it and realized it's okay. It's not that strong. And that shifted our perspective on a lot of things because Spur with an exert cost became really difficult to play. Plus, the summon's losing 2 health, plus you're paying energy. There's all these other factors to it. So, on the surface level, Spur looks great. Once you start playing with it, it's a very different situation. Uh, and then Stone Protector is actually another great example of a card that on paper it seemed fine. It's funny to say on paper, but and then once it's actually gone onto cardboard and actually into the game, it plays very differently. And all of a sudden your mind kind of expands with all the things you can do with it. So the purpose of playtesting should be giving you another layer of information. Don't just try to find the same things again. Try to find something new with it. Now, I talked about environments. I'm going to do a little bit of a bonus thing and talk about environments. So in software, the companies I worked for, we always had four to five levels of environments. There's a local, that's where your developer is coding things on their computer locally. There's a dev environment where the developers are sharing things with other developers. Staging, where they start sharing with other people internally. Sandboxes, when it starts seeing out client-facing stuff. So usually it's just the client, no customers. And then production is when it actually gets released and customers can actually start using it. We actually incorporated this into Genesis, and this is one of the things that I feel I can personally do differently than any other person who makes a TCG, because I live and breathe this environment idea, this philosophy. So I brought this into Genesis. So our local environment is what we call the formula. It's one of the most powerful tools to make sure that we don't break anything really, really early on in development. Then we have dev, which is our exploratory testing, where the developers are sitting together with these cards. So that is a condense, or at least my run through of this topic right now. Maybe in the future I can break it. I will pull up the chat onto my screen so I can actually see the chat as I'm going through these slides. But if you have any questions, throw them in there so I can address those. All right. And while we're waiting for the questions to come in, let's just talk about some things that are coming up. Don't forget, every week we have the Meta Mondays run by Will. Great guy, great community, and great initiative here. So I really, really appreciate everything he does. Tuesday, we're talking, we have Exploring the Library. That's happening with me and Alex Miller on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. And next week, we're going to be talking about Rulebook 4.0 and the changes that are coming in the rulebook and everything that's cool about it. Maybe if we can, we might try to coax a guest speaker, but we'll see what happens. Fridays, we have the Game Design Talk, which we're doing right now. Thank you for everyone who joins. Thank you for all the support. And if you have topics for it, let me know and I'll add those into a queue. If you ever want to come on and chat with me, let me know and we'll make that happen. And then Future League testing is happening right after this on the Discord servers. If you want to help with the testing process, that's the best way to do it. John, you asked, so at what level of intention should you explore the data you're receiving at each level? You should be exploring the data at all times. So I talked about the waterfall methodology. Something I didn't actually bring up was something called Agile, the Agile methodology. So Agile was developed in the early 2000s, late 1990s. And the idea there was to give small companies a framework that they could use to really compete against large companies. So large companies have this ability to throw a lot of money at a problem. If there's an issue they want to deal with, they have the capital to resolve that and try to make the most of it, make things better. Small companies don't have that. But the one thing small companies have that big companies don't have is the ability to adapt themselves into new environments. So the way they did that was they incorporated the last three key phases of a product, which is development, testing, and launch, into a harmonious cycle. So they're now able to create a piece of code, test it very, very quickly because they're testing it while they're developing it, and then launch it independent of the rest of the product so it can go out there immediately. This small cycle allows them to fail quickly, learn from their mistakes, and also put out fixes as quickly as possible. Bringing it over into our terms about developing a tabletop game. Now, you can't release updates to your cards as easily as software can. Like, we have a typo on a bunch of our cards. People know that. We all we can do is put up something on our website saying that's cards being erased, but we can't actually fix the card live. Like, I can't go over to your house and grab a marker and fix the cards. But the one thing we can do is get the information from testing as early as possible to know which cards should and shouldn't move forward. And this is where that data is very, very valuable. So as you're testing, as you're learning information, make sure you're incorporating that with every time you do a playtest session, every time you do an exploratory testing session, any type of testing, you should be incorporating all your previous data into that so that your software, your release, your version is the most up-to-date version that you can have at testing. If you're using any old data, you're now putting yourself in a bit of a slump. So don't do that. Try to have the newest information available to your testing team whenever it's ready. All right. Next tournament that's happening. And of course, if you have more questions, throw them into chat. I will answer questions as I'm chatting about these other things. Next tournament is on June 12th. So not this Saturday, but next Saturday. That'll be a standard tournament. It's just for fun. Come play. And we'll enjoy ourselves the most we can. Next chapter. Now, I would love to know for everyone who's watching, and there are a few people who are watching, did you read this week's Akashic Codex? I absolutely love that chapter. So if you haven't read it, if you're not up to date with all the stories, go to the website, go under lore, and read the chapters. They are so good. Carl does such a great job. So if you haven't read those yet, go read them. The newest one was our first major war scene, and it's Vadhis and Ajna, so Raha, Fong, and Long versus Rain, Kendra, and the appearance of Kor. And it was just such a great moment. I loved everything about it. The angel appearing was just so epic. So go read that. And then this Monday, we have our town hall, which will give us an opportunity to just have a good conversation back and forth and enjoy things. So come to the town hall 6 p.m. on Monday to chat with me about anything related to Genesis. Steve, go read them. They're not super long. They're a really good read. So I look forward to getting your feedback when you have read them. All right, for everyone who missed it, here are the 6 winners to the pitch contest. Pixie, Tornado, Unicorn, Sapper, Feldspector, Rewind. Really, really excited. Really pumped to see how these are going to change everything related to meta and the future of the game. But this is also your opportunity to see one of the first Phage cards I mean, this isn't what it's gonna be named or everything, but it's pretty close. It's getting there. So I'm psyched about that. Congratulations to everyone who won and got a card into Origins. The other thing, this was announced on Tuesday. I've put out the announcement on the Facebook and to the retail stores and distributors and everyone. But retail stores that have put in their pre-orders before June 30th for Jalara Second Edition, they'll be getting an alternate art Baroque promo card, which is only available through this pre-order. That artwork looks really, really cool. You get the Jalero Second Edition logo stamped onto it. It looks like a really, really great card. It will be given to all the stores that get us their pre-order numbers before June 30th. So if your retail store has put in their pre-orders and you want to get this, so let them know that you want the promo and make sure that they reach out to us. We've already had a handful of stores, but it's not all the stores. I know there are many more stores that have put in the pre-orders, so we're just waiting for that to go through. All right. Um, and then last thing, upcoming topics. Next week, I want to talk about the concept of never giving up. I have a lot of stories. I'm going to be reiterating the concept of learn, pivot, keep moving. But I've had a lot of low moments, and I kind of want to share my stories about some of the lowest moments working on Genesis, developing the game, and feeling like it wasn't going to happen, and then pushing through and making it happen. So I'm going to share some of the stories. It's going to be a bit of a deep one, but I think it'll be very enjoyable. All right, that's everything for this week. My throat's starting to get a little dry. Let me grab some water here. Throw this up as well. All right, if you have any more questions about testing, anything you want me to go over in the future, let me know. Send me a message. You can directly message me or message the Genesis Facebook page or whatever is easiest for you, and I will work my best to make that happen. Thank you so much for joining, and I'll talk to you again next week. Bye.